October 2020 demanded the disbandment of the Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS, a controversial police unit notorious for human rights abuses, including extortion, torture, and extrajudicial killings. The protest garnered international attention, highlighting not only police brutality but also systemic governance failures. The movement reached its climax on 20th of October 2020 when soldiers were said to have opened fire on unarmed protesters at the Lekki toll gate in Lagos. The incident triggered national and global outrage, with calls for justice that echoes to this day. However, the full truth of what happened, the number of casualties, and the official response remains shrouded in controversy. Now, 4 years later, there are still missing pieces. 4 years later, there are still countless unanswered questions. Is the protest or even that night in October a closed chapter? Are Nigerians getting closure? Most importantly, there are those who also say that the END SARS protest was supposed to rein in a consciousness of good governance in Nigeria and also highlighting the ills in governance in Nigeria. Are we learning anything from that experience? Tonight, we continue to get some of those answers by speaking with individuals who were on the front lines, those who say they see bear the scars both emotionally and physically from that night of chaos. And one of those who also lend their voices to that protest is a lawyer and rights activist, Mr. Inibehe Effiong, who is live for us from Lagos virtually. Thank you so much, Mr. Inibehe Effiong, for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much indeed. Well, there are those who directly say they bear the brunt of what police brutality could be for them, for their family. One of them tonight is joining us live in our podcast studio. She's Obianuju Eloanya, who says up to today, she's still looking for her brother. Obianuju, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Sharon.
I'm coming to the story in which I want a lot of Nigerians to be able to understand what exactly happened to you and your brother, what are the pains, what really went down. But Mr. Effiong, give us an understanding. If you look at 4 years down the line, the struggles, the agitation of the 20th of October and the days preceding or afterwards, how do you describe that agitations against police brutality? That was the anchor point of that protest. But it does look like it was beyond that. Would you say we have learned any lesson whatsoever?
I'm not sure if at the political level, whether the people who describe themselves as leaders in Nigeria have learned any lessons. I'm also not certain and whether they are even willing to learn lessons, because what we have seen since the mass movements of young people in 2020 is an attempt to deny the impact, the message, and the factors that precipitated that movement. Now, for the Nigeria police, it is obvious that no lessons have not been learned. The culture of impunity, the rots in the system that led to the END SARS protest and movement, from the killing of Nigerians to the wanton extortion, harassment, scapegoating of people, the use of the police for civil matters, and the endemic corruption. These ills have not been addressed, and the police leadership and hierarchy in our country have shown embarrassing unwillingness to change the course and do things differently. 4 years after, or 3 years after, Nigerians are still being targeted. Young people are still being profiled on the basis of their appearance, on the basis of the car that they drive, on the basis of their hairstyle. These were the things, even on the basis of the sort of mobile phone that they carry, these were the things that young people complain. Some of the grievances that Nigerian youth had against the very monstrous and murderous Special Anti-Robbery Squad, SARS. Even though the federal government had disbanded SARS in quotes, and I said disbanded in quotes, because what seems to have happened is that it looks like there was a change of name. They basically just disbanded the name, and then SARS now transitioned into something else, or what used to be SARS basically transitioned into something else. So in terms of code of conduct for police officers, respect for the rule of law and human rights, and instilling of discipline in the force, nothing has changed. Indeed, it has gotten worse. The police is still being used to rig elections. The police is still highly partisan today, as we have seen recently. So END SARS was not just about SARS. END SARS was about addressing the ills, number one, in the police, and secondly, in the country. END SARS was just the mantra of the mass movement of young people. But the issues that had activated that movement were beyond SARS as a unit of the police. So today, quite tragically, the lessons have not been learned. And what that entails is that the next END SARS protest or movement is going to be stronger, more popular, and more daring than the one of 2020. That is what I anticipate is going to happen. History will repeat itself, and when it repeats itself, I'm not sure how that is going to end, because the Nigerian government seems to only respond to violence. When you want to engage peacefully, the government has criminalized peaceful expression of grievances by Nigerians. Citizens are no longer allowed to activate or ventilate their grievances. So we saw the clampdown on the protesters till date. Some of them are still being incarcerated. The panel that we set up have not, the recommendations have not been implemented. So how can we say that lessons have been learned? But guess what?
Yes, yeah.
The young people of Nigeria learned one lesson, that when they are organized, when they galvanize, they can actually hold power accountable.
Would you say that based on the, because when you set out to do something for the purpose of what you wanted to do, you imagine that whether or not you achieve your goal and your desire, would you say the goal of END SARS protest in 2020 has been achieved? Was it a failure or a success?
No, I cannot describe the END SARS protest as a failure. I think that would be dishonoring those patriotic youths of our country who laid down their lives for the collective interest of the country. I think it will also be a disservice to those who were arrested and incarcerated, those who were injured, those who were traumatized in the course of that protest, to say that it was a failure. To the extent that the message that young people, when they come together, they can chase the political miscreants who have ruined our country. They can give them a run for their money. They can make the seat of power uncomfortable for them. To that extent, that message resonated. I believe that movement, that protest was a success. However, the struggle to have a reform, a sign, a discipline, and a rule of law compliance and a human rights compliance police force, that struggle has not achieved its objective. So we have to look at it carefully. I cannot pass a judgment of failure on the END SARS protest, because for whatever, no matter the side of argument one takes, I participated in that protest to some extent, and I know that I saw the power of young people. And for me, that is a success story of the END SARS. So I don't want us to demonize the history of the END SARS struggle. I don't want us to demonize that movement. The government ought to have seen that contrary to the expectation that revolution is not possible in Nigeria, END SARS gave some of us a moment of reflection that it is actually possible to wake up one day and experience a revolution. Because it was a revolutionary reaction. It was not planned, it was not televised. Something triggered it, I think, in Asaba or so, where a gentleman was attacked, by the police on the highway, and then that snowballed into a nationwide movement and protest. So what the END SARS has shown is that it is possible for Nigerians to hold their politicians accountable when they are united. Even though in the northern part of the country, the END SARS movement was not very active. But that is understandable, because if you have been to the north, for those who have been to the northern part of our country, SARS was not really a problem. I mean, I've traveled to Kano, I've traveled to a few northern states. You don't find police mounting checkpoints at everywhere harassing people. It is mostly in the southern part of Nigeria, particularly in the southwest, in the southeast, and the south-south. So maybe that is the explanation for why our northern brothers and sisters were not very active. And of course, you must also know that the government tried to sow the seed of discord, the seed of tribalism, and they tried to make it an ethnic agitation by insinuating that those who were protesting were doing so because the then very incompetent president of Nigeria, who had the misfortune of misruling this country, Muhammadu Buhari, was a northerner. So they used that sentiment to dissuade a significant portion of our northern youth to stay away from the protest. But guess what? The recent protest, the End Bad Governance protest, was even more active in the north. So I believe that it is possible for a day to come where the forces of division, the voices of segregation, of religious bigotry will be silenced. And when that day comes, that will be the day, the unification of the oppressed people of our country. When that day comes, END SARS will be a child's play. And I believe that day is close. Because if you look at the handwriting on the wall, you clearly see that the government is in a complete and total panic mode. The Tinubu regime has completely lost any sense of stability. They are now on overdrive. They are now easily triggered by people carrying placards, to the point that the very serious crime of treason has been trivialized. So people who carry placard are being charged for treason. Currently, people are standing trial at the Federal High Court for treasonable felony. And when you look at the charge, they claim they attempted to overthrow the government on WhatsApp. This is how ridiculous our government has become. So what that tells you is that they are afraid. They are very scared. And I think that fear is understandable, because things have gotten worse. Police has not stopped harassing Nigerians. No form of accountability. People are still being shot almost on a daily basis across the country. Extortion on the highways have only increased. So how do you expect that there will be no other END SARS? I think another END SARS is coming. And that day will not be announced. No notice will be given. Something will trigger it. And when that day comes, like it is said, no idea, no army, no force can stop an idea whose time has come. I believe that time will come eventually.
Let me ask you, there were 5 for 5, very popular. Those were the demands. And if I may quickly read out some of those 5 for 5 demands that the protesters were asking for, because at that point, there are those who say, can the protesters harmonize their demands and let there be a targeted approach in the manner in which they went forward? And one of the 5 for 5 demands was immediate release of all arrested protesters, justice for all deceased victims of police brutality, and appropriate compensation for their families, setting up an independent body to oversee the investigation and prosecution of all reports of police misconduct within 10 days. The fourth one was, in line with Police Act, psychological evaluation and retaining to be confirmed by an independent body of all disbanded SARS officers before they can be redeployed. Then increase police salary so that they are adequately compensated for protecting lives and property of citizens. If you look at those 5 for 5, 4 years down the line, would you say we've made any progress as a people, as a nation, for the government and even the police force?
The answer is no. The answer is no, if you look at it objectively. Let's start with even the basic ones. Yes, the government had empaneled judicial commissions in Abuja, in a couple of states, about 20-something states or thereabout. These panels were set up to investigate cases of police brutality, except for Lagos and maybe 2 other states where certain amounts of money were paid as compensation to individuals whose cases were made out at the panel. The rest of the states, the reports of the panel, most of them were thrown into dustbin. They have neither been even made, they've not been made public, let alone implemented. So what that tells you is that our government has always been dishonest. There was no willingness, there was no commitment to fulfill even the demands that the government itself had pledged to fulfill. There were several officers, police officers, that the Judicial Commission of Inquiry had recommended should be prosecuted. No single officer, not one in the entire country, to my knowledge, has been put on trial on account of an indictment or being indicted by any of the judicial commissions set up in any of the states of the Federation or Abuja. As a matter of fact, I think in 2018, the Muhammadu Buhari regime had also directed the National Human Rights Commission to carry out a similar investigation. That report was also not implemented. So the government has always been dishonest. So Nigerians are not really the problem on this matter. Now, look at the welfare of police officers, which was one of the demands. I'm not sure if much has been achieved in that respect. And all you simply have to do is look at our policemen. They are still wearing colonial-like uniforms. Many of them are highly unmotivated. Police stations are still grossly underfunded. And even when some resources are made available, they are, I believe, to a large extent diverted. So today, if you go to a typical police station in Nigeria, you still have to pay for biro, have to pay for exercise book, you have to give them fuel their car, provide what they call mobilization for them to investigate cases. So now the police has become a private organization funded by Nigerians. The government claims they are budgeting money, but when you need police to investigate cases for you, you still have to be the one to provide the resources. That is not how a public institution is supposed to be run. Now, look at the reforms, other reforms that Nigerians demanded, right? What has the government done about it? What has the government done? The protesters that we demanded their release, how many have been released? And like I said, people are still being detained in Lagos here. People connected to the END SARS, even though efforts have been made by the civil society and the human rights community to get them out, but some people are still being detained on account of that protest. So no matter how you look at it, the Nigerian state was dishonest. The government has always been dishonest on this matter. And that is why I am saying clearly that the next END SARS that is going to happen, the name may not be END SARS, but I believe that a day is coming in this country. And our politicians, like I keep saying, they're intentionally deaf and willingly blind. This so-called political class witnessed END SARS. They have witnessed the End Bad Governance protest. No lessons have been learned. They have not understood what people are saying. They have willingly chosen not to read the handwriting on the wall. The carelessness, the recklessness, The looting, the injustice, the oppression, the mismanagement is still ongoing. Institutions are still working against the interests of the people. So a day is going to come, and I believe that day is not far away, when it will be obvious to them. They will be compelled to accept that Nigerians have had it enough. Because with END SARS, one would have thought that those who claim to be leaders in our country will begin to do things differently, that the police will begin to act differently. But nothing has changed. It's still the same culture of lawlessness and impunity in our country. And I'm saying that is not how to govern. That is not how to behave in the 21st century. So those demands that they have ignored, a day will come that Nigerians will compel them to fulfill those demands. And I hope that when that day comes, it will not be too late.
So you look at it, in Abuja, about 410 million naira was being asked to be paid in in Lagos, for about 410 million naira was being said to be paid in compensation. There are about over 250 petitions that people brought. About 30-something of them were being forwarded to the federal government. In Abuja, payout of about 289 million was said to have been asked to be paid as compensation. But if you hear the story of the compensation in Lagos and Abuja and in some other states, would you say those were some kind of benefit that came out of the panel of inquiries that were set up over the END SARS protest?
Of course, like I said, the government deceptively, and I say deceptively, because the whole idea of setting up these commissions of inquiry, these panels across the country, was to ensure that those who are victims of police brutality, that their cases are attended to, and where recommendation is made for payment of compensation, the government had promised that they were going to pay those compensations. And I indicated that save for Lagos, and I think few other states, majority of the rest of the country, the recommendations were ignored. So those figures that you have called, it is only Lagos that I'm aware, and I think Osun or Ogun, one other southwestern states, that I know that some attempts were made to compensate victims whose cases were found by the tribunal, by the panels, to be meritorious. In Abuja, I'm not aware that compensations were paid, because the Buhari regime told us they were going to send a supplementary budget to the National Assembly in order to pay compensation not only to the panel in Lagos, but throughout the country, because the argument was that police is a federal institution and the governor said they cannot be responsible for it, which is ridiculous to some extent. They were speaking law, whereas we know that state governors are diverting money monthly in the name of security votes. We know that governors are buying vehicles for the police. We know that governors are giving money to commissioners of police in states. So how can you say that citizens who are residents in your state that were killed or injured or wrongly detained, and the panel that you yourself set up said pay them compensation, you now want to be exculpated from it? That is why I'm telling you that the government, both at the national and subnational level, they haven't learned any lesson. I believe that someday, I hope that someday, those recommendations will be implemented, and those who are entitled to compensation will be paid. We cannot continue to run a system where the judicial process is allowed by the Constitution to give remedy and succor and a sense of justice to citizens. And when that process is activated, when citizens go through that process and the outcome favors them, the government will ignore it. That is a recipe for anarchy. It's an invitation to lawlessness. So this Tinubu regime has so far not shown any commitment to implement the recommendations of those commissions of inquiries in terms of payment of compensation. Look at Lagos, for example, where a massacre took place, as found by the Lagos own commission of inquiry. The panel set up, the tribunal set up by the Lagos state government, found that there was a massacre. We are now aware that the government went behind and committed about 100 million in the name of giving medical support to some of the victims who were shot at the toll gate. The same government that claimed that nobody died, they went to give some money, right? Ridiculous amount of money to families of victims. So that shows you how dishonest our political class, so-called political class, shows how dishonest that class is. They don't care about honesty. Because if you have to compensate people, why do you have to do it in the middle of the night? Why do you have to do it secretly? Yeah, just because they don't want to admit responsibility for what happened. And the soldiers who shot Nigerians at the toll gate, while they were singing the national anthem, raising the national flag, showing till date, not a single member of the armed forces has been put on trial, or has been court-martialed, or has been dismissed for that grave atrocity that was committed against Nigeria. Because when you are shooting people for singing the national anthem of your country, for raising the national flag of your country, two of the most important national symbols that any country has, is a way of saying you are setting patriotism on fire. It's a way of telling those who want to love Nigeria that they are stupid, that they don't have senses. How can you be shooting people that were singing, sitting, they were peaceful, and you shot them until date? That tragedy has not been addressed. The government is just going about it as if nothing happened. Even the toll gate, they have refused to rename it as recommended by the panel. So how do you expect young people to be happy? How do you expect them to be happy?
Mr. Effiong, let me ask you, are you aware of the ECOWAS judgment against the federal government, which in some ways vilified the federal government, over the END SARS and gave compensation to those who went to the ECOWAS court? How would you describe the import of that July judgment of the ECOWAS court?
The Nigerian state was found guilty, and the Nigerian state, the penalty of history. That is how I want to say it. The ECOWAS court has been very progressive, not only in respect of the END SARS, even in other cases where the jurisdiction of the ECOWAS court has been invoked. The ECOWAS court has been very responsive in speaking truth to the injustice that the Nigerian state has carried out against Nigerians. The Buhari regime was indicted for his role, his complicity in the killing of Nigerians. So that is a reminder that the international community knows what is going on in our country. People are aware. It wasn't a hidden thing. All the international media, they televise it. Even your own channel, everybody, every Nigerian, every media organization in Nigeria followed the protest. So people are aware of what happened. And I believe that one day, a day will come in this country that those who took part in that atrocity at the toll gate and the killing of Nigerians across the country during that protest will be held accountable. Because currently, people are just carrying on. These people are just carrying on as if nothing happened, as if nobody can do anything. But I believe that a day is coming. The judgment of history is also going to be delivered. I mean, look at Buhari today. Buhari has left office, right, 1 year after. Nobody has invited him to deliver a lecture. Of course, it's not like he even has the capacity to deliver. I'm just saying that having left office, what is his memory about? What is the memory that we have of Buhari today? Nigerians remember him as the dictator. We remember him as the man under whose regime citizens were slaughtered, like the killing in Kaduna of the Shiites, aided, on the complicity of the Kaduna state government, and killings of Nigerians that was so rampant, the extrajudicial detention, illegal detentions, right? The fact that the economy of our country was destroyed, the fact that the exchange rate was bastardized, disobedience to court orders, the invasion of courts, the elevation of nepotism as a national policy. That is what Buhari is remembered for. Nobody is remembering Buhari today for any good thing that he did for Nigeria. How about corruption that was brief? So I am saying that history is already judging these people. And I hope that they are sensitive enough to see it. I hope they are sensitive enough. Even though Tinubu is not making Buhari look like a joker. Because he told Nigerians he will continue from where Buhari stopped. And that is why he has not said anything about the END SARS reports. He has not said anything about implementing it. He's doubling down. The atrocity that Buhari perpetuated during END SARS, Tinubu is continuing with his own atrocity against the protesters of the End Bad Governance. Can you imagine how people are being arrested across the country for coming out to demand an end to bad governance? Tinubu is saying, I don't want bad governance to end. That bad governance has to continue. That is the message. Because people are saying end bad governance, and you are not happy about it. You are telling them that you want to continue with bad governance. That is why you are arresting them. That is why you are filing frivolous charges in courts, wasting the resources of the federal government, pursuing charges that do not have head, headless charges, senseless charges, making a nonsense of our judicial system, all in the name of silencing Nigerians. So Tinubu has not learned any lesson from the END SARS protest. So we simply cannot continue like this. We cannot continue like this.
All right. Give me a moment. I have someone here live with me in the studio. Her name is Obianuju Loya, who has a peculiar case with the Nigerian police and perhaps our experience on this issue of END SARS. Thank you so much, Obianuju, for joining us. What exactly? You have a brother called Chijioke, isn't it?
Yes.
And for how long now have you not seen your brother?
It's been 12 years.
12 years.
12 years by November.
What happened to Chijioke?
Chijioke was arrested by the police in Anambra State, and when we got the call that they were, because it wasn't just him, they had gone for a child dedication ceremony, and so when we got the call that he was arrested, my mom went to the station at Ajali police station in Anambra State to effect his bail. When she got there, they told her that she can't effect bail because she was a woman, and so it was, she just can't pay for his bail or get him released. So she had to call my uncle because my dad was already angry that Chijioke slept out that night. So
how old was he 12 years ago?
20 years.
He was 20 years old at the time.
Yes. So
he was arrested by the police. Long now, have you not? He was detained by the police.
It's doubling nonsense about judicial.
My mom called
how long now?
Nonsense about judicial system.
While they were, my
all
uncle was
in the name of silencing
the police station in Ajali said they got the call from Okuzu
Tinubu has not
SARS
learned any lesson. Any lesson
everybody that is in
from the END SARS protest.
So the boys, all of them were transferred to Okuzu SARS. So my mom called my dad and said, this is not something that I can do on my own. It's now involving SARS. Okuzu SARS has called for their transfer. So my dad rushed to the station, to the Okuzu SARS.
What day of the week was this?
This was on a Friday.
On a Friday.
Yes.
So what day did they transfer them?
It was on Friday that they were transferred.
They transferred on the same day?
They were arrested on Thursday and then transferred on a Friday.
So he slept over on Thursday, the night on to Friday,
yes.
And they were transferred to SARS.
Yes.
He was detained in a normal police cell,
yes,
but transferred to SARS custody.
Yes. So when
still in Oka?
No. Ajali is a town in Anambra, and Okuzu is another town in Anambra.
How long? What's the distance between these two towns?
It's quite a distance, maybe like an hour.
Okay.
So they were transferred. So my dad, from Oka to Okuzu is quite close. So my dad just went to Okuzu to meet with them to know what is happening. My mom drove there to meet him. When they got in, they met the officer in charge, the OC of SARS, that is James Nwafo, and he denied having anybody being sent to the station or having any people being transferred to the station. So he told my parents that they can go, but they can come any other time and see if the boy was there. But like at this moment that the boys were not there, my mom assured him that she was told by the police in Ajali that they're transferring these boys to your station. And so she was quite sure.
How many were there?
There were 4 boys that were arrested.
That were arrested.
So,
for what offense was your brother arrested for?
So the Ajali police station told my mom that they were arrested for making noise. They had been playing loud music in a compound where they were doing the child dedication. So somebody had reported the noise of the young boys and they were arrested. That was the answer we got from Ajali police station. Then they were sent to Okuzu, which was a shock to everybody. Like, why are they moving them? But it was a normal thing to do in Anambra State as at then. I would want you to know. Between the time of 2010 to 2014 in Anambra State, it's normal for anybody to be taken to Okuzu SARS for any reason. But
so just for any reason,
Yeah.
they take you to Okuzu.
yeah, but it's also very important to know that when your loved one is at Okuzu SARS, you can't sleep, because
Why?
the chances of the person returning alive is quite low, very, very low. Okuzu SARS was known for killing young people in Anambra State during that
The
period.
police officers in Okusu
Yes.
were notorious
Yes.
for allegedly killing extrajudicially
Yes,
innocent people
yes,
who are in their custodies.
yes. And this is something that is easily verifiable. When the panel of inquiry was set up in Anambra State after the END SARS was violently shut down, they had over 100 cases at the panel, all of them pointing at what happened between 2010 and 2014 in Anambra State, all pointing at James Swanford, who was the officer in charge in Okuzu SARS. All of them pointing at people losing their loved ones, never being charged to court for any reason. These people never had an opportunity to defend themselves of any crime, just arrested by Okuzu SARS and killed. So my parents went there when they were told that the boy was
This was
not
a Saturday.
Yeah. No, this was on a Friday.
Oh, see that Friday.
That Friday.
Great.
So my parents went there and they told that the boy was not transferred. As they were leaving the station, my mom saw the boys being led in. And so she raised the alarm and said, this is the boy I'm looking for. This is actually the boy we are looking for. This is him.
So they saw him.
Yeah, they saw him and they were in cuffs. So my mom started shouting at him, Chijoke, what did you do? Why are you here? And James Swanford came out of his station and said that they should throw them out. Like they should throw my parents out.
Who is this James Nwafo
He was the officer in charge then.
in Okusu SARS?
Yes, he has now retired. So when my parents were thrown out, they came home and everybody was like, you can't sleep. You have to go back because if you waste any time, this boy might die. Right? So they went back on Saturday. They were not even allowed into the station. The police collected money from them and said, we are going to feed the boy.
How much was it?
A couple of thousands. They were always taking money from them to feed the boy. I was a teenager then. I was not even involved in all of this because they were.
So Chijoke was your older brother?
Yes, he's my elder brother. So they
So
were shooting.
you probably immediate brother.
Yes, he
Okay.
was my immediate elder brother. So they were shooting all of us from it, right? Trying to be adults about this. So they went on Saturday. They were not allowed in. My mom cooked on Sunday, took it to the station, gave them. And then on Monday, my parents went back and then said they want to see the OC. Since you're not allowing us to see the boy, at least let's see the OC and know the next course of action. And then they got in, they met with James Nwafo and tells him, please, sir, we've been trying to see this boy since he was brought here, but we've not been able to. So we want to know what is the next course of action. My parents are willing to pay money if that was what was necessary, right? This man looked my parents dead in the eye and told them, I have killed your son. No, he said, if it's those boys that you came to see, I've killed them and there's nothing we can do about it. You are too late. This is literally less than 72 hours of them being sent to Okuzu SARS. How did you kill them? My mom, of course, slumped immediately. My dad couldn't believe it. So he stood there and was asking him, so what are you saying? He said, no, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. You should leave my office. So they had to take my mom to hospital. They came back home and friends came around and were like, maybe he just wants you to offer money. Did you people even offer money when you went there? You're just asking questions. So my dad had to sell our land and take money in a bag. And that was the first time I'm seeing millions of naira in my life. It was packed in a bag, 3 million, and went to meet him and said, please, man to man, I'm begging you, this money, take it and just give me my son. This was like a couple of weeks after, right? So we sold this land urgently. It was not at the worth of the land. And this man said, this money is too small. It's too small, but even if it was enough, I said that the boy is dead and there's nothing we can do about it, and stop disturbing me, right? And so my dad came back a broken man and we started going through human rights organizations, lawyers. Lawyers will take money from you and say they are going to take the case to court, and then they get threatened and they say they can't take the case to court anymore. They are scared of this man. He was a terror. So this continued until my parents were like, okay, so let's leave everything to God. In 2013, January 2013, we got information that there were dead bodies in the Uzu River in Anambra State, that there were dead bodies were dumped by the police. Right, my parents went there. All of us did, but because women can't go into the river, we were up. My daddy went into that river and was turning those dead bodies one by one to find my brother, and he was not part of them. So we all had hope that he's alive and maybe this man is just lying. But it continued year in, year out. We kept on trying to get him, trying all our best, reaching out to everybody that we know, all the contacts that they had then. Nothing came out of it up until now. And that was why when I finished school and I came to Abuja for my NYSC, in 2019, I started to speak out about it. Because for a long time, everybody in Anambra told us, you can't talk about this. You can't say it publicly. He will track you to your house. He will kill you. But then I was no longer in Anambra. I was far from him, and I felt safe enough to speak out about it. So in 2019, I made the tweet about it. And then I saw him on Twitter. That's James Nwafo. So I quoted his tweet, and I called him out. I said, you are not good enough, a police officer, to be asking people to join the police force. So I detailed what had happened to my brother and everything. And he replied, funny enough, he replied, they said, oh, those boys were arrested for armed robbery. And there was exchange of fire and my brother died. How is there exchange of fire when my parents saw him alive in your custody? But even if my brother was Anini, even if he was the worst terrorist on earth, you have arrested him. He deserves his day in court. Why didn't you just take him to court? How did he die in your custody? It was a simple question, and he never did answer that question. So when END SARS started in Abuja, I was at the office. I heard that some people went on the protest and were chased back by the police that Friday. And I started to join the protest. So I joined and led the protest in Abuja up until the time it was quelled in Lagos, and all of us were scared for our lives. And I had to go back to Anambra State for the judicial panel. And that was it. I went to the judicial panel. That's a whole new problem on its own. My lawyer came from Abuja, Abdul Mahmoud. He was my lawyer then. He came from Abuja to Anambra. We went to the panel. And the police then says, okay, so yes, the police legal rep, his name is Innocent Obi. He says, yes, the boy was arrested. The boys were arrested. And then they were interrogated. And they confessed to being armed robbers. And in January 2013, which is a different story from what James Nwafo says, right? In January 2013, they took them to their hideouts. And when they got to their hideouts, their colleagues opened fire on the police, and my brother was shot. And he was taken to Nnamdi Azikiwe University Teaching Hospital, Newi, and he died there. So my lawyer asked for the doctor to come and confirm if this is true. The doctor did not come. Okay, so if the boy is dead, where is the body? The least you can do is to release the body to the family. Nothing like that has happened. Nobody gave us an answer to that. I was hopeful at that panel that after the panel has sat, they would then release their findings to the public and maybe make a recommendation. Anything. I wanted justice. I was really quite hopeful. Everybody in my family was like, okay, this is the time that we might get justice for it. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. The END SARS panel, judicial panel of inquiry in Anambra State, never released their findings. They never made it public. It was submitted to the governor, of course, and nothing came. No white paper was released. Nothing was said about it. And it just felt like everybody moved on, right? And this has been the path. We would have hope that something will happen, and then nothing happens. Last year, I decided to do a one-person protest in Abuja myself because I was quite scared for people joining the protest. It was in July, which was ideally Chijoke's birthday. I was scared of doing the protest with people because a new government was just inaugurated. I don't know how they would react to a full-blown protest. I did a 10-day one-person protest in Abuja, and it led to my rep, Obi Orobu, taking my petition, finally like paying attention to me, of course, and taking my petition to the Public Petition Committee of the House of Representatives. In December last year, I was called to the committee. I went, the police did not come the first day. They came the second time of the hearing. They said that they did not have enough information. Bear in mind that between 2019, when I took over advocacy for my brother, to 2024, I've sent over 20 petitions. I got to a point where like I was a lawyer writing petitions every other day. The police acknowledged receiving my petition via email. I sent them an email. On Twitter, the PRO acknowledged seeing my petition. They accepted that they saw it, but then at the panel, they said they didn't see my petition at all. They never got it even from the panel because I submitted at the panel too. So they were issued a new one. The next time the hearing came on, they also said that they don't have enough information to give any answer to my case. And so the panel mandated them to send the IG because this case has been on for so long. They want the IG to come and give an answer to this issue. And that was how the police stopped coming to the panel. I went, the last hearing was in April. The panel told me that they would get back to me on a new date. They've not given me a new date. The police never came to the panel. They never gave answers to this issue.
And the body of Chijioke has not been found
at all up till today.
And the hospital in which they said they took his body to, were you able to go to the hospital to find it?
So my parents
at
went
the
to the
hospital?
hospital. It's in Nnamdi Azikiwe Teaching Hospital. And the MD
is in Awka?
Is in Nnewi.
In
Anambra State.
Yeah.
The MD then was in 2020, right? Also said that like they never got anybody. But even if they did, he wouldn't even know because this happened in 2012 or 2013 as the police claimed. 7 years later, if they got a body, I don't know how they would have preserved it. But why the police then refused to give us access to Chijioke while he was in their custody is another issue. Why would you take someone who has confessed to a crime per se to the crimes to go and meet with these people? And how come it's only Chijioke that was shot in this shootout, and this never made any national dailies, even state dailies during that period? Nobody heard about this shootout that happened, and nobody else, the police did not succeed in getting his colleagues that were arrested.
Where are your parents now?
My parents are in Anambra State.
Can you describe to me what Chijioke was like? Your brother. What was it like? What was your relationship like with him?
Chijioke would tell people that I'm his twin sister. Like most people, he would tell them that I'm his twin. And many people did not know that he was older than me because of our closeness. But also, he's the second child of my parents. And, firstborns have a little bit of pressure on them. Chijioke did not have that. He was very easygoing, very fun. He loved dressing up. His favorite thing is to buy new clothes or new shoes. That's one of the things he loved doing. And he also draws. And he has a very silly sense of humor. He was really, if I talk about him, I imagine him alive. I just imagine him smiling or making fun of someone. He's very bubbly, has a very warm personality. And that was why he kept on playing tricks on people about both of us being twins. If you ask him, say, oh, that's my twin sister, so you can't talk to her and all of that. He was really like very easygoing, and he had a lot of friends.
What was his ambition like? What did he want to become in the future?
He wanted to, if you ask him, he said he wants to be a businessman. And then he says, oh, he wants to go to school and study business administration. I kept on telling him that business administration, it doesn't necessarily mean businessman, but he wanted to be a businessman, buying and selling. Did
he ever get to the university?
He had written JAMB when this happened, and we didn't even bother checking his result or anything.
Because he was nowhere to be found?
Yeah. There was no need to check or see if he got admission.
How much did you miss Chijioke?
I am literally controlling myself to not cry. I love my brother to death. And that was why when everybody has moved on, I keep on pushing for it. That's why I did the protest, the one-person protest. It wasn't because it was fun. It wasn't easy. I was under the sun and rain. It was in July. And you know Abuja's sun and rain and how it comes. I was under that sun with my placard. And people were passing me in front of National Assembly, looking at me with pity eyes, and yet I still have not gotten justice. That's how far I can go for him. That's how much I love him.
Do you imagine, for some reasons, maybe one day, maybe he's even alive? Do you imagine maybe somehow you might see him again, or maybe you might see his body? Is that what sometimes comes to your mind, flashes to your mind?
Honestly, sometimes generally, we want to believe that he's alive. In the back of our mind as a family, we have not yet accepted that he's dead. At least my parents haven't. I've come to the conclusion that there is like 90% possibility that he's gone. I mean, the END SARS protest was viral. If he was alive, his picture, his name was called several times during that protest. He could have, I felt like if he was alive, he would have tried to make contact with us or something. But I don't know. I don't know. But I imagine that if I see him alive, I would be very, very grateful. If we get his dead body, it will be closure for my family also. Because we need that closure more than anything to know. The worst part is not knowing what happened. Like, what happened?
Do you sometimes come by some of his properties?
Yeah.
And does it remind you? What does it remind you of?
Most of his clothes and shoes. And when I see it, when I even see my little sister wear it, sometimes I get angry at her, like, why are you taking this thing? You might just come back and want it. But this 12 years ago, most of them wouldn't size her. But like, I don't say it out. In my heart, I say it, but I also know it's a stupid thing to think because those things wouldn't size him if he was back. But it feels bad. It feels hurtful talking about him in past tense, right? It also feels horrible to know that James Nwafor is getting away with it. He has retired. He told my dad there is nothing you can do about it, and it's becoming a truth. And my parents will never be able to get justice for Chijioke, maybe.
What would you like to have happen if you have your way? What would you love to see as a form of closure?
Honestly, I would like, first of all, for James Nwafor to be arrested and prosecuted for the crimes he committed, not just against my family, but for so many families in Anambra State. I would also like for Uzu SARS to be excavated because they kept on burying people there and throwing bodies behind their walls and everything. That entire SARS should be shut down because it's working now. They said that they had shut it down, but no, it's working. They're using it now as a police station. They need to excavate that entire place. James Nwafor needs to give my family closure. He needs to tell us what happened to Chijioke. If he's dead, he needs to show us where he buried him or where his body is at. He needs to tell us what really happened. What happened under 72 hours that you look a man in the eye and tell him that there's nothing he can do about his son. Even if he was Shekau, he's already arrested and in cuffs. What I don't know, danger did he pose for you that you needed to have him dead? And if it is true that his friends killed him in a shootout, why weren't his parents informed? They've been coming to look for him.
Was Chijioke that kind of person that could have committed armed robbery?
I do not think that my brother is an armed robber. I think that the police found it convenient to say that. But even at that, they shoot themselves in the leg. If somebody is arrested, 48 hours is enough time to take them to court if you have any reasons to. 1 month is even enough. For you to arrest him in November, and then you tell me that he went to show you, he was interrogated from November till January for him to be able to say that he's an armed robber. It shows that the Anti-Torture Act is also violated, right? Because he could be saying that under duress if he ever said it. That is if he ever said it. But bear in mind that this is the legal rep that was saying this, Innocent Obi. James Nwafor told my parents within 72 hours and my brother was already gone. So who do we believe? The legal rep and the story that he's telling us from the files that he said he read, or James Nwafor that told us point blank that he had killed this boy and there's nothing we can do about it? Because that was his words.
Mr. Effiong, you heard of Obianuju's story. To close this podcast today, what comes to your mind in terms of the way and manner police go about their duties in the country and the case of Chijioke and the way Obianuju narrated this story today to us?
I'm familiar with the case. I've met with Obianuju once in Abuja. I also know their lawyer, Abdul Mahmoud. I followed this matter for a while. What the Chijioke's case exemplifies is that Nigeria is either now probably a failed state or is moving very fast to becoming one. One can call it a failing state. You do not have a situation where the judicial institution of a country, the House of Representatives, that is the National Assembly of a country, the National Human Rights Commission of a country is unable to find answer about the disappearance or the killing of a citizen. And what makes this more tragic is that this man called Nwafo is still alive. He's not dead. While he was in service, this matter was going on. He retired, he's still being protected. So that makes me to wonder, are there highly placed people who were using him for their criminal enterprise? Because for someone to be shielded from the House of Representatives, for the police as an institution, to give him such coverage, such protection from the courts, the judicial system, and what was supposed to be a parliamentary inquiry, there are highly placed people supporting him. You know, the truth is that, to a large extent, many of our police officers are nothing but, criminal gangs used by politicians. Policemen are used in our country to rig elections. Policemen have been caught during robbery. So it is really sad and tragic that Chijioke has not been accounted for. And I hope that matter will be addressed.
Thank you indeed. Do you have a final word, Obianuju?
The only thing I can say is that Children Media had documented my protest and all my other advocacies for Chijioke, and it will be out. I want people to actually take time to watch it. I want people to think, if I were their sister, if Chijioke was their son, their brother, their cousin, just their friend, what would they be doing? Because END SARS is not just a fun thing that young people did in Nigeria. No, END SARS was a protest about people, real life people, people's lived experience. We were in pain, and that was why most of us were out on the streets protesting. I would really like people to think about that and then ask themselves, have we done enough for these people who had lost their life to police brutality all this while? And how can we then get them justice? I want the government to also question themselves and their conscience. The 5 for 5 that we demanded for doing END SARS was not too much. And it is unfair that 4 years after, we are still demanding the same things and begging for bare minimum to be done. James Nwafo needs to be arrested. He is in Oka. He is a free man, and he's still threatening people. He should be arrested and prosecuted for his crimes.
Thank you, Obianuju. Appreciate it. Thank you so much indeed. Mr. Inibe Effiong, lawyer and right activist, thank you so much indeed for your time today.
Thank you. Thank you, Shehu.
Well, that is the Mic On podcast for today. And thanks everyone for watching. Don't forget that you can follow, subscribe, and also share some of these content so the people who are not able to watch now can watch later. And you also can watch any of the past episodes of the Mic On podcast. It's been some very, very interesting conversation today. I'll see you next time. I'm Sean Kimale. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining. You can also decide what we'll be talking about next time on Mic On Podcast with Sheono Kimbaloi. Just follow us on the Mic On Podcast on all leading social media platforms and share your thoughts and comments. We are happy to hear from you. Make it a date with Seun Okinbaloy on Mic On Podcast every Saturday at 7 p.m. as he x-rays issues beyond the regular and dives deeper to depths that allow him bring you answers to questions on your mind. In this podcast room, everything points to accountability, and you are the boss. No one understands how to hold public figures to account like Seun Okinbaloy. Catch Mic On Podcast live this Saturday at 7 p.m. on YouTube, Instagram, and X. Mic On Podcast for the independent mind. Thank you for joining us on this edition of Mic On Podcast with Sheono Kimbaloi. Mic On Podcast for the independent mind.